Hi, folks. In today's segment, I'd like to talk about some interesting subjects. Foreign policy and war. Now, America has a long tradition of trying to get along with its neighbors and our friends in Europe. Foreign policy, as Secretary Clinton will tell you, is an important element in our overall function in the globalized marketplace today. I'm sorry about my dog. I try to get him in a video, but the only way to do it is with meat. He loves meat. He is enticed by the opportunity to get something for nothing, which is exactly the point that I'm going to make with foreign policy. Right, Marley? Yes, something for nothing. That's what motivates Marley. And that's what motivates some of the people that we deal with, whether they're allies or friends, whatever you want to call them. People we're trying to motivate really work well with enticement. But it doesn't work too well for the American people. Now, you can stay in the video, Marley, and I'll give you a piece of meat occasionally in order to have your lovely face in here alongside my ugly one. Smile. Good dog. Anyhow, foreign policy has been mishandled by this country for years. Probably 60 years, maybe 70 years. We really don't get that much out of it. Basically, foreign policy is in place to try to manipulate different governments to do the things that we want them to do. In the case of the Cold War, it was primarily there to prevent them from falling into the domino theory of politics with the Russians and the other communist countries that we have to deal with. And today, we're trying to do things for foreign countries that are humanitarian in nature. In some cases, we still try to direct the global stage in order to make things happen in the world that we would like to see. One can say that nation building is not something we do very well when we try to do it externally. We are good at nation building when we make states out of the territory that we control. I'll say that again. We are good at nation building when we make states out of the territory that we control. Good dog. Now, foreign aid and foreign policy go hand in hand. We give something, we get something. Okay? That's how it works. And it doesn't really work too well overall. It's nice when we do humanitarian projects. With Haiti, we helped them out after the terrible natural disaster that they had. We've tried to help other countries, tried to bring them up onto their own feet, and so forth. By and large, it doesn't work out that well. Similar to a theme that I've covered in other videos, we have a huge problem here in America with poverty, hunger, homelessness, and joblessness. Simple fact. Everyone knows this. Everyone agrees with this. Where I live in upstate New York, it's obvious, it's prevalent. If you drive up from the 5 boroughs of New York City, you will see almost immediately the effects of a long-term liberal policy. Now, I'll get in trouble for saying liberal. So I have to be more specific, I'm told, and say that it's a Democrat in this case, or many Democrats, that have made this happen. So today that means Governor Andrew Cuomo. Yes, he has put in place policies and delivered on policies that were put in place before him that have limited and decimated upstate New York. What does this have to do with foreign policy, you say? It's upstate New York. It's far removed from foreign policy, and yet it's not. If we were to take what we spend in foreign policy, foreign aid to other countries, whether it's inducement or on a humanitarian basis, and we just eliminated it, with the exception perhaps of where it's beneficial to us for military purposes in order to maintain order and protect the borders of the states where it's necessary. If we were to eliminate that foreign aid completely and subjugate it every year to a rigorous type of scrutiny where we can control what is spent on foreign aid, we would save tons and tons of money. There's no doubt. And yet, we're prevented from doing that for a number of reasons. Now, I'll take Israel as the prime example because Israel is one of our best allies. And no matter how you look at it with Israel, of course, it became a country, I believe it was 1948. The British donated the territory, and more or less Israel became a state after United Nations vote, and here they are. And no one can blame them. I mean, after World War II, with what they had gone through, no one can deny that the Jewish state had an opportunity to exist, and it's there now. And the Jewish people understand something. They understand that if people attack you, no matter whether it's surreptitiously or directly, that you have to confront them. Okay? They understand that very well. And it's because they live right on the border of it. I mean, it's right there in their face. And here in the United States, we don't see that so much. We're insulated, isolated because of the geography. We're across the big pond. We don't always see that. But it's come to our shores many times. 9/11, San Bernardino, lots of other examples the press doesn't report on very much. It's out there. And the left has tried to define the narrative on the whole thing in order to present it in a more positive light and prevent us from being Islamophobists, to prevent us from being xenophobic, and any other aphorism they might try to declare it. The thing of it is that if we were to eliminate foreign aid for a year, with the exception of those military possibilities that I spoke of, we would save a lot of money. And because we have a large population that is poor and hungry and needs to be taken care of, we should deal with that first. That's how I feel about it. And, you know, I've tried through various service organizations to serve the people in this region that have needs like that. Every year that need increases because we lose jobs. The opportunity isn't there. And yet our government gives away tons of money to foreign nations, governments, and humanitarian aid, but we don't take care of our own people, and that's a problem. So, foreign policy, as it stands in relation to foreign aid, in most cases should be cut, just eliminated, and we'll look at it as on a case-by-case basis after that. Foreign policy as it relates to imminent global transpirations, things that happen in daily life, whether it's Russia, taking the Crimea, or ISIS doing their thing with their caliphate, that gives us the opportunity to act if we want to, with more of an iron hand, so to speak. And of course, there's always ramifications. Ramifications from that. As one person reminded me recently, we're morally responsible for what happened to the people in Syria. And we probably are in some cases because we didn't act after they crossed that line in the sand that the president put out there. And now it's too late because the Russians are there. And you know what? The Russians really understand global politics in some way because they just don't care. They realize there's going to be collateral damage in war and conflict, and so they just go forth and they accomplish their objective. Now, certainly Putin's doing this because he wants to prop up his own failing regime and, help people in economic hardship in his own country feel better about it and so forth and so on. And he's basically a scumbag, but what can you do? That pretty much eliminates the possibility of our intervening there on less than a diplomatic scale, because if we do, then we're going to be in trouble because we're going to have to fight Russia. And that means nuclear war. No one wants that. So I would say that we should approach foreign policy with more of a firm footing. Whether it's in the Middle East, in Europe, or on our southern border, we should say, look, and we need to say it. We need to say, look, this just isn't good. It's a harsh reality that you have to recognize. When you have 11 million illegal immigrants coming across the border with Mexico, you have to take a stance on that. And we haven't done it. Or at least we've played lip service to it, but hey, it doesn't work. And you can't blame the people. They want an opportunity. They want a chance at the American ideal. And yet, we have to control our borders. So let me get back to Europe and Middle East for a minute. Europe definitely has been protected by us since the end of the Second World War. If you look at NATO, its composition, and the amount of troops that are donated to it, as well as money, the major player in NATO is America. And we don't get much back for our efforts. The Cold War is over, supposedly. We don't get much back for our efforts there. So I would say, hey, Europe, time to step up and, contribute more money, contribute more troops. Russia's on your door. If you don't want the Baltic states taken over, maybe you ought to help do something about it. Yes, we can put some more troops there, but you better take a stronger stance yourselves. It's time to grow up. You're not children anymore. We're not coming to your rescue tons and tons more times. You have to stand up for yourself. In the Middle East, it's a bit different story. It goes back to World War I. The Versailles Treaty, when people in Europe carved it all up. And Wilson tried to moderate, but he wasn't successful. And so you end up with situations where you've got extreme Muslim elements in combination with Christians and other extreme Muslim elements that go back centuries. It's a mess. No one can figure it out. I just would think that beyond the oil, which has been the major player in the last 70 years, there's nothing much to gain from pouring all kinds of lives into that. So I would say unless it's a direct military need, why give them foreign aid? Doesn't make sense. On foreign policy with those people, whether it's Turkey, Saudi Arabia, any of the other players in the region. You have to say, look, we're tired of this crap. We need you to step up. If you're not going to step up, then we're going to step back and just see what happens. Good luck with that. Enjoy it, solve it if you can. But if you want our help, you've got to step up and do some of it yourselves. Whether it's refugees or the conflict itself, whether it's confronting ISIS, they need to step up and actually get a set and do something about it. Most of those countries have spent millions, billions, maybe even trillions on building up their militaries and other programs. Why can't they step up and do something for themselves? They can. They just won't because they figure, if it becomes a big problem, we'll just call Captain America and have that be the solution. Well, I can tell you, after 8 years, nearly 8 years of a liberal president who is obviously unwilling to tackle such difficult subjects, that's not likely to happen. If I was in Israel right now, I would say, geez, doesn't look like America's got our back anymore. And I'd have some legitimate, serious questions about what's going to happen if they get into a conflict. Will America be there? Not under Obama, that's for sure. So anyway, I think that foreign aid should be cut and reviewed annually for effectiveness and what have you, and that the surplus derived should be spent here in America on poverty, hunger, homelessness, those types of things. Build up the military again. A strong military is very important for this country. So we should build it up. We shouldn't let it falter or fall or get behind the technological innovations of other nations like China, which has surreptitiously hacked us and cut us and otherwise damaged us. We ought to make it so that, we're equal again. We're stronger than that. And yet, on the left, they'll tell you that, we have to be careful. America's done such terrible things. Then we should be ashamed of ourselves and we should apologize for every inequality and every terrible thing that we've done to people and blah, blah, blah. And I would say that American exceptionalism, if you want to call it that, and what America has done for the world over the last century has shown American exceptionalism. We bailed them out in World War I. We bailed them out in World War II. We have put up a front over the Cold War to maintain the status quo and prevent nuclear war. We have spent billions of dollars in all of these foreign countries. And yet the left will say, we have to apologize. Well, I'm not into apologies like that. Yes, there have been inequities. Yes, we have done some things that are terrible and probably shouldn't have done. But I really don't care. Because overall, we've done more good than bad. And that is what defines America. Now, that leads me to war. I've talked a bit about foreign policy, and it's intertwined with war. Now, the 19th century, this country understood what war was for. When you go to war, it's an all-out thing with a clear objective where you have clear, tangible, accountable results. Something you can take home and put in the piggy bank, or territory that you can add to make the United States better. They understood that in the 19th century. We've gotten away from it in the 20th and now the 21st century. And I really just don't fathom why. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to take territory in a war or a police action and then give it back. Why? What sense does that make? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's based on a fallacy. There is no true objective unless you intend to keep the territory. Now, I will admit that if you go to war on a defensive footing, that you're protecting yourself, and you don't necessarily want to keep the territory. But if we're going to go to the Middle East or to Europe and save their butts or protect our interests, then we should keep the territory and make states or territories out of it. In my lifetime, we have not added a single state to the Union. Not one. Is there not more room on the flag for additional stars? I think there is, but we haven't done it. No, we apologize, we spend lives, we spend American blood, and for what? Nothing. Just to achieve the policy agenda of whoever is in power at the moment. I don't think that's what the American people want. I think the American people want tangible, realistic, achievable goals with results. And that means that when you go to war, when you're going to spend American blood, American sons and daughters on the battlefield, putting forth the ultimate sacrifice, that you should have something tangible in return. And that either means territory that can be made into states, part of the United States, and or a certain amount of treasure, which is less appealing, but we should end up with a profit somehow out of the whole ordeal, rather than just see it go back down the rabbit hole. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, I grant you that the modernity of modern weapons, information, the effectiveness of insurgencies makes this difficult. But if you give people around the world the opportunity that they so much seek by immigrating to America, then you'll have something that is tangible. So, let's say, for example, the Iraq War. Yes, in hindsight, it was a mistake. We took out a dictator that was evil. We tried to set up a government and nation build, and hey, it didn't work out. Now we've got a caliphate there. If we had gone in there and taken it from Saddam and said, hey, this is ours now, or maybe we split it up a little bit with the French and the British, who, at certain times had Iraq as a colony, then I don't think we'd see ISIS there now. So that makes sense to me. If we had done that, if we had gone in there and said, look, we are going to keep this territory, we're going to keep, your natural assets, the oil, and we're going to extend America here and make all the civil liberties that we have available to you and give you our form of government, and we're going to control it, and we're going to allow you to prosper. I think that most of those citizens there would be happy about that. If you give them the opportunity without fear of death or reprisal, they'll probably be happy to take that. Makes sense to me. But it's a 19th century idea that no one talks about anymore. It worked back then. If you look illegal immigration, Mexico, Guatemala, pretty much the South American countries. Donald Trump says, look, we're going to build a wall. We're going to build a wall. Mexico is going to pay for it. Now, Americans don't build walls. We build human capital. When the Berlin Wall fell, it was celebrated around the world. Commies built that wall. They wanted to keep people in. They had to keep their population static because those people wanted to flee their oppression. And that's similar to what we're seeing in those South American countries. They're basically economic refugees that flee north to America so they can have the opportunity to actually shove something in the mouths of their kids and support their families south of the border. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a purely human thing to do. But if we were to say, look, you either control your borders or we're going to control them for you. And if we have to, we'll provide our own form of government for you so that these people have the opportunity to live like normal human beings. And then we'd end up with a territory. We'd make it into states. Mexico and the other South American countries have various natural resources which would contribute on their part to making it a good acquisition. They would have the opportunity. They would bring the assets. We'd eliminate the cartels. Things would be better. And yet, none of our politicians ever mentioned that. Donald Trump is not a revolutionary. He is not too much of an original thinker. Build a wall. Yeah, like that's going to work in the end. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. But if you say to those folks, look, we're going to present you with this opportunity. It can be done diplomatically. We could say, look, we're going to have a referendum. How many of you would like to be United States citizens? And if you get an overwhelming response, then you make it happen diplomatically. If you don't, and they're still coming over the border in droves and the Mexican government can't control it, then you just take them over. Simple as that. And you make it happen. And that makes sense to me. But to send Americans into some foreign war with no tangible objectives or outcomes is dumb. It is stupid. And people won't support it. So that's why I say it's important to think about the end results. And yes, it might be 19th century thinking, but it worked. Back then, we turned huge swaths of Mexico into states, and look how good that turned out. I mean, yes, there was some bloodshed involved. Doesn't have to be that way this time. So just think about it for a bit, okay? We extend America south. Now, back in the 20th century, America was responsible for the completion of a great engineering project called the Panama Canal. Cost a lot of lives, a lot of loot, but we made it happen. Benefited the whole world. And then in the 80s, we just gave it back to Panama. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. That's still being used today. Ships go through the canal, back and forth, back to international trade. We gave it back to the Panamanians after we paid for it in perpetuity. And we made it happen, and yet we just give it away. Stupid. Doesn't make sense. So I say, if you extend the border from where it currently stands all the way down to the Panama Canal, it's naturally defensible. It extends America. People get liberties. People get opportunities. Win-win. Perfect. But no one ever mentions it. And no one will ever do anything about it. But it's an idea to think about. So, let me review quickly foreign policy, foreign aid. Be harsher on foreign policy. because we don't get much out of it. Eliminate foreign aid, at least 90% of it. Review it annually with what you replace after that. War. Never go to war unless it's for self-defense or if you intend to keep the territory and treasure. This is the only reason to go to war. Defense, treasure, and territory. The only reason. We shouldn't go to war, waste lives, and then pull out and say, good luck. I mean, that's just stupid. So, that's it. That's my rant on that. Think about it. To me, it makes sense. To you, it might not. A lot of folks will say it's not humanitarian. But humanitarian or not, it makes sense. There's hardship and change, no matter what kind of change it is. And as America, if we want to survive and prosper in the 21st century, we have to make smarter, often harsher decisions in order to prosper at this time. Thanks, folks. Have a good one.